They fined me $750 for a non-compliant shoreline barrier, even though the barrier had been there since 1998, long before the HOA existed. By day 12, I'd filed 3 certified letters, pulled 2 county plats, and found a clause buried on page 142 that changed everything. Welcome to my channel. I'm David Collins, a civil engineer from Denton County, Texas, and I document what happens when power forgets its public. If you like seeing lawful justice handled with precision, you're in the right place. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, where are you watching from? I read every comment. When this started, I wasn't looking for a fight. I'd inherited my dad's lake house, 2 acres on the west inlet of Cedar Ridge. He passed in 2019, the same week the HOA expanded its jurisdiction to all bordering parcels for safety alignment. Dad would have called that a land grab. I just called it Tuesday paperwork, until they showed up. The new HOA president, Marlene Kitt, wore pastel suits and a permanent frown that could probably qualify as a zoning violation. She had a clipboard for every occasion. The first time I met her, she was measuring my dock with a metal ruler, muttering something about non-standard materials. I said the dock was treated pine from 2006, perfectly within spec when installed. She replied, "We'll see what our compliance officer says." It felt less like governance and more like occupation. A week later, I found a yellow slip stuck under my wiper blade. Formal notice: structure encroaches on common waterway, removal required within 14 days. The lake shimmered calm behind her signature, mocking me with its indifference. My father's ashes were scattered there. 14 days felt like a countdown on his memory. I asked around. Old neighbors said Marlene had grand plans: build a gated pier, charge annual access fees, modernize the HOA's lakeside lots. She bragged about a unified shoreline experience at the last meeting. The phrase made my teeth itch. I told myself to ignore it until I got the fine. The envelope came certified, $750 due immediately, plus inspection costs TBD. That was the moment something inside me clicked from patience to purpose. I wasn't angry yet. Anger's expensive, but I was curious. And curiosity, in my line of work, usually leads to blueprints. That night, I poured coffee, spread the HOA covenants across my kitchen island, and started marking inconsistencies. The map showed the lake as common use. The deed in my father's files said privately retained water rights, recorded in 1976. 2 sets of language, 2 overlapping claims. My pulse steadied. I wasn't imagining this. They'd overstepped. I spent the next few days at the county clerk's office, pulling records until my fingertips smelled like microfilm toner. The clerk, an old-timer named Reggie, squinted at the parcel map and said, "Son, that line's inside your boundary, not theirs." He stamped the copies. The sound echoed like a verdict. When I got home, I called my neighbor Jenny, a local reporter who'd covered zoning battles. She laughed when she heard the details. "You know how many HOAs collapse over one missing signature? Keep everything. Document each notice, each timestamp, every phone call." She paused. "And never ever lose your temper. They'll bait you." The next morning, Marlene showed up with a deputy. She pointed at my shoreline like it was contraband. "Mr. Collins, you're in violation of Section 8. Remove the dock or we'll escalate." The deputy shifted uncomfortably. I stayed calm. "Ma'am, Section 8 doesn't apply to private ownership." She smiled. "Not anymore." That smile was my ignition. I filed a request for all HOA meeting minutes referencing shoreline management. They ignored it. I sent another, certified. Still nothing. So I printed the state's open record statute and taped it to their clubhouse door. It took 48 hours before they called, furious. "You can't post legal documents on private property," I said. "That's the point." By then, I'd decided to play the long game. Every rule has a weakness, and every overreach leaves a fingerprint. By the 3rd week, my phone log looked like a surveillance record. 8 calls from the HOA, 4 from their compliance committee, and 1 from the sheriff's office, just checking in. It was the beginning of what Jenny later called the pressure phase. Every authoritarian committee has one. They test whether you'll fold under nuisance. The first escalation came disguised as routine maintenance. A contractor in an orange vest started measuring along my fence line. When I asked who hired him, he mumbled, Association work order. I took a photo of his badge and date stamped it. March 14th, 9:37 a.m. The next morning, I found a new notice taped to my door. Unauthorized structure. Dock electrical lighting must be removed. I didn't even have electrical lighting. They were just firing in the dark now. Jenny met me at the diner that afternoon. "They're setting you up for a cumulative non-compliance case," she said between sips of black coffee. 3 active citations equals enforcement authority. At least that's how they'll spin it. So they can fine me indefinitely? Exactly. But it only works if your property is subject to their recorded covenants. I smiled. "Which it's not." "Then make them prove it," she said, "in writing." That night, I printed a certified demand for documentary evidence of jurisdiction. In simple terms, show me the filing that puts my parcel under HOA control. I gave them 7 business days to respond. They didn't. Instead, Marlene left a voicemail dripping with false calm. "Mr. Collins, we've decided to suspend your lake access privileges until further notice for safety concerns." I replayed it twice, because it sounded like parody. My lake access privileges, as if they owned the water. I started cross-referencing, parcel maps, chain of title, water rights assignments, everything my dad kept in that battered blue binder labeled Ridge Lake, private. Buried inside was a notarized document from 1976, water rights deed, retained by owner and successors. It included the exact coordinates of my shoreline, sealed with the county stamp. That was my first real weapon, but I didn't draw it yet. Knowledge nugget number 1. In Texas, common interest communities can't retroactively annex properties without recorded owner consent and a 2/3 majority of existing members. Silence doesn't equal consent. 2 days later, a white SUV with the HOA logo parked across my driveway. A man I'd never seen before stepped out holding a clipboard. "Afternoon, I'm performing a visual assessment of non-conforming fixtures." He started snapping photos of my mailbox, my gutter, even my dog. I called out, "You're trespassing." He said, "HOA authority covers this lane." I pointed to the property marker embedded in the gravel. "That marker says otherwise." He shrugged, got back in, and drove off. I wrote everything down: time, date, license plate. My engineer's instinct kicked in. If you can't stop chaos, measure it. That weekend, Jenny convinced me to attend the open board meeting. The HOA clubhouse looked like a country club that had gone through an identity crisis. Cheap coffee, expensive chairs. When I entered, the chatter dropped a few decibels. Marlene sat at the head table, flanked by 2 board members and a security guard who looked bored out of his mind. She tapped at the microphone. "Mr. Collins, you've been quite active with your inquiries. We appreciate community engagement, but your behavior borders on harassment." "My behavior?" I said evenly. "I'm asking for proof of authority. You've ignored 3 certified requests." Her eyes narrowed. "We are the governing body for this subdivision. Then you'll have no trouble producing the filing." A murmur rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "He's got paperwork." That was the first crack. I could feel it. Halfway through the meeting, Marlene proposed a motion to reclassify shoreline parcels as community managed. I asked, "Do you even have quorum for that?" Her expression twitched. She hadn't expected me to know the term. Afterward, an older man approached me in the parking lot. Name tag read Hank, Maintenance Committee. He said quietly, "Don't let them scare you. Half of us think she's gone too far." Then he handed me a folded paper, the HOA Insurance Policy Declaration. "Check the exclusions," he muttered, and walked off. When I got home, I read it 3 times. Under exclusions, any property not expressly owned or maintained by the association is not covered for liability purposes. That meant if my dock truly wasn't HOA property, they couldn't even legally inspect it. I emailed Jenny the excerpt. She replied, "That's your tripwire. Don't touch it yet." In the meantime, viewers on my channel began commenting about similar cases. So let me ask you directly, are you firmly anti-HOA, or have you ever been on one that actually worked for its residents? Drop your experience in the comments so others can learn what to watch for. Over the next few days, I started mapping every HOA action against their own bylaws. Violation dates, board vote counts, missing notices. By Sunday night, I had a spreadsheet with 17 discrepancies. I printed it, 3-hole punched, labeled it Evidence Log, Phase 1. And then I waited. By mid-April, the HOA still hadn't produced a single line of jurisdictional proof. What they had produced noise. Anonymous flyers appeared on mailboxes claiming I was endangering community safety with unauthorized dock wiring. Someone even posted my parcel number on Nextdoor with a red X. Jenny called it the soft smear. She told me to screenshot everything before they started deleting posts. That's when I decided to escalate. I contacted my old college friend, Sam Patel, a municipal attorney who specialized in property law. He wore his glasses crooked and kept a legal pad filled with color-coded tabs. When I explained the situation, he chuckled. "They're bluffing with air. I've seen this movie before. Let's find the reel-to-reel." He requested the HOA's Articles of Incorporation and any amendments filed with the Secretary of State. 3 days later, he called. "You're gonna love this. Their incorporation boundaries stop one lot before yours." "You're kidding." "Nope. And they'd need unanimous consent from all existing members to annex new parcels. Guess how many signatures they filed? 0. 0. I hung up, feeling something close to relief, but it was laced with strategy. I needed to confirm the deed overlap before showing my hand. So I called Reggie at the county clerk's office again. He laughed when he saw me walk in. "Back for round 2? "Round 3, I said. "I need any filings referencing Cedar Ridge HOA expansion from 2015 onward." He typed for a minute, frowned, then spun his monitor. "You're not going to find much. Only a notice of intent, never executed. They missed the follow-up filing." So their authority was an illusion, paper thin. I drafted a letter with Sam's help. Formal notice of jurisdictional deficiency, citing statute numbers and recorded plat coordinates. We mailed it certified. Return receipt requested on April 19th at 3:16 p.m. Knowledge nugget number 1 already told us silence doesn't equal consent, but here's another layer. When an HOAC continues enforcement outside its legal boundary, each fine becomes an ultra vires act, beyond authority, rendering it void and potentially fraudulent under state consumer protection law. The next day, I installed motion-activated cameras at the dock. By nightfall, one caught Marlene herself standing on the walkway, flashlight in hand. She paced, wrote something on her clipboard, and left. At 7:42 a.m., an email arrived. "Due to continued non-compliance, your case will be referred to legal counsel." I replied, "Please provide your counsel's bar number for my records." No answer. That weekend, Hank stopped by again. He leaned against my fence, holding his thermos. "They're rattled. Marlene's been calling emergency meetings." "Over what?" He smirked. "Over you. She told the board you're planning to sue." "I'm not." "Not yet," he said, "but she's acting like you already have." Jenny published a small online piece about jurisdictional overreach in suburban HOAs. She didn't name ours directly, but everyone in the neighborhood knew. Comments flooded in. One read, "They fined us for mailbox paint chips." Another, "We got cited for leaving Christmas lights up past January." The narrative was shifting. I wasn't just a homeowner fighting back. I'd become a proxy for everyone who'd ever been bullied by a board with too much paper and too little restraint. Still, I kept quiet about the real bombshell. What I found in the 1976 deed addendum, a clause titled Perpetual Water Rights and Easement Enforcement Authority. It gave the original owner, my father and successors, control over the lake's use for maintenance and environmental compliance, meaning, if they wanted to dredge, dock, or drain, they needed my permission. That was leverage, and I stored it in a safe deposit box. Late one night, while reviewing documents, I found myself staring at Dad's handwriting in the margins. "If they ever mess with the lake, remember this page." It hit harder than I expected. He'd seen this kind of fight coming decades ahead. I promised quietly, "I'll finish it right." Before signing off that night, I left a note on my desk. "Don't fire too soon. Let them overreach one more time." The next morning, they obliged. An official letter had arrived, dated April 29th, stating, "HOA board has voted 4-0 to assess daily penalties until compliance is achieved." They even attached a running total, $5,250 projected by month's end. That was their mistake. Once they monetized the threat, they crossed from nuisance into actionable territory. So here's a question for you reading this. When an HOA finds someone thousands over rules they can't legally enforce, should it be treated as civil negligence or criminal fraud? Tell me what you think below. I spent the next week consolidating evidence, time-stamped images, certified letters, voicemail transcriptions, plat overlays. Every piece of paper had a number. On May 6th, the file box snapped shut, tabs aligned. Phase 2, Jurisdictional Challenge. By early May, I'd learned the rhythm of their harassment. Mondays were notices, Wednesdays were inspections, and Fridays were reminders. Like clockwork, each envelope carried the same stale font and self-importance. But I'd stopped seeing them as threats. They were evidence. Each one, numbered and logged, was another nail in their own procedural coffin. Sam advised patience. Let them exhaust their pattern. Every new letter helps us show intent. So I did. I let them dance. On May 10th, a new notice arrived. Emergency safety inspection scheduled. Immediate access required. They cited community liability exposure. Translation: they wanted inside my house. I called the sheriff's department, asked if the HOA had lawful entry rights. The deputy on the line paused, then said, "Sir, unless there's a warrant or imminent hazard, absolutely not." That small verification became another data point in my binder. Jenny stopped by that evening with brisket sandwiches and a voice recorder. "We need a timeline," she said. "Start from the first notice, end at the inspection threat." We laid the papers across my kitchen table, sorting them by color-coded tabs. The pile looked absurd, 32 documents for a doc they didn't even own. While she typed, she asked, "What's your endgame, David?" "Correction, not revenge," I said. "They've forgotten what community means. I'm just reminding them, with citations." She smirked. "You sound like your dad." "Good," I said quietly. That night, I drafted my next move. Notice of intent to seek declaratory relief, but I didn't file it. Not yet. I needed one more act of overreach to seal their pattern. It arrived faster than I expected. May 13th, 7:12 a.m. I caught a vehicle pulling into my lot. Marlene and 2 board members stepped out, armed with clipboards and a handyman carrying a bolt cutter. I hit record on my phone, walked out calmly. "You're trespassing," I said. Marlene smiled, too wide. The board voted to secure the dock pending inspection. By what authority? Our community safety clause, which doesn't apply here. Then we'll let the police decide. She made the call right in front of me, performing for her audience. When the cruiser arrived, I recognized the same deputy from my earlier inquiry. He looked from her to me, then at the property marker. "Ma'am," he said, "this parcel's outside your HOA boundary. You have no jurisdiction here." The silence afterward was pure music. That was the day I realized the story's tone had changed. I wasn't defending anymore. I was documenting their downfall in real time. But they didn't back down. The next week, Marlene sent a mass email accusing me of endangering the community's reputation and harassing board members. Someone printed it and slipped it under my door. That was their attempt at public shaming. It backfired. Neighbors began texting privately, saying they were tired of her power trips. Hank forwarded me internal emails she'd sent. One line stood out. "We must establish authority over all lakefronts before renewal of liability coverage on June 30th. That was her real motive. Control equaled insurance coverage. Without it, the board's exposure would triple. Knowledge nugget number 2. HOAs often rely on master liability policies contingent on defined jurisdictional maps. If those maps are wrong, the insurer can deny coverage retroactively. Meaning, Marlene wasn't just bluffing, she was cornered. The next day, Sam and I met in his downtown office. He was already flipping through the insurance documents Hank had provided. "She's desperate," he said. "If the insurer realizes they've been billing on false coverage, they'll terminate the policy and possibly seek restitution. So she's doubling down to hide it." "Exactly. Which means she'll make a fatal administrative mistake soon. Be ready." I was. I created a small LLC, Lakeview Resource Group, under my name, filed quietly through an online agent. Using the retained water rights, I assigned temporary maintenance authority to the LLC. That gave me formal standing to issue environmental access permits, which meant, legally, the HOA now needed my company's approval for any lake-related project. That was the setup for reversal number 1, but nobody knew it yet. Late one night, I stood at the dock watching the water ripple under moonlight. The air smelled like cedar and cold diesel from a distant boat. For the first time in months, I felt calm. My father's brass plaque glinted under the flashlight. "Preserve what you inherit." I whispered, "I'm doing my best, old man." But calm never lasts long in conflict. By dawn, a new notice waited on my gate. Unauthorized business activity detected. Violation of HOA bile. OW 3.2. They'd somehow found the LLC registration. Instead of deterring me, it confirmed they were watching, guessing, and guessing wrong. So I smiled, filed the letter, and kept building my case. Now for everyone watching, where do you think the line should be between community safety and property rights? Can a board ever claim jurisdiction by assumption, or should every boundary be proven on record? Comment what you'd want lawmakers to fix first, because this part of the story proves it matters. By May 20th, the HOA's tone had shifted from smug to panicked. The same board that once wrote threats in bold italics was now CCing their risk consultant and temporary legal advisor. The cracks were widening, but so was their desperation. The harassment turned chaotic. Too many hands scrambling to plug leaks. I woke to a door hanger marked "Urgent, Final Notice." This one accusing me of operating a business for profit in a residential zone. They cited my LLC by name. I laughed. For profit? The LLC hasn't earned a dime. But it didn't matter. They were looking for leverage, any pretext. So I leaned into documentation mode. I filmed the notice, took stills, printed the timestamp metadata, and logged the USPS tracking numbers of every letter I'd sent. My binder now filled an entire banker's box, labeled Evidence, Volume 2, Harassment Pattern. Each plastic sleeve crinkled like armor. Sam said, "We're ready to trigger it whenever you are." "Not yet," I told him. "Let's let them self-destruct first." They obliged beautifully. That week, I received 6 citations in 3 days. Mailbox color, fence alignment, overgrown grass, it wasn't, and a noise complaint about my dog barking during non-existent hours. The kicker came when I found a notice taped to my truck windshield. Vehicle left in disrepair, community standard violation. The truck was spotless, parked in my driveway, inspected 2 days earlier. Jenny helped me film a short update for my channel. We're cataloging what selective enforcement looks like in real time, I said on camera. Every notice, every false claim. This is how power abuses paperwork. I wasn't angry. I was surgical. Viewers flooded the comments with their own stories, whole neighborhoods recognizing the pattern. One of them wrote, "They did the same to us after we questioned financials. You're not alone." That line hit me harder than expected. Because under all the legal maneuvers, what drove me wasn't revenge, it was legacy. My father's property, sure, but also his principle. You don't let power rewrite your boundaries. By early June, I started sleeping less, half expecting more night visits. The cameras caught cars idling by the curb, lights flicking off when I stepped outside. Once someone left a note, "Sell while you can." I sent it to Sam. He said, "We're beyond nuisance now. That's intimidation." Knowledge nugget number 3. Under Texas law, repeated baseless enforcement attempts combined with surveillance or property interference can constitute criminal harassment and even civil rights violations under property owner protections. We decided to move toward the reveal, carefully. The setup was in place. The LLC held the water rights. The HOA had been overbilling insurers on false maps. The board's votes were procedurally void. But I wanted a stage where the facts couldn't be spun. That meant the annual meeting, June 28th. Jenny grinned when I told her the plan. "Public set piece. Classic," she said. "You'll need a neutral authority present." "I've already got one," I said, pulling out a contact card, the same deputy who'd confirmed they lacked jurisdiction. He's on duty that night. The week before the meeting, the HOA mailed its annual financial report. Buried on page 6 was a line item. Lake maintenance contract, pending renewal, $18,400. I cross-referenced the vendor. They'd signed with Lakeview Resource Group, my own LLC, because Marlene H.E. hadn't checked who owned it. The invoice even carried my digital signature, hidden in fine print. That was reversal number 1. I now legally controlled their lake maintenance contract. When I told Sam, he just stared at me, half laughing, half astonished. "You actually made them hire you." "Not me," I corrected. "Just the entity with the rights they never verified." He exhaled slowly. "This is surgical, David. Just keep it clean. No gloating." "Always lawful," I said. The night before the meeting, I sat on the dock again. The air was heavy with humidity, frogs echoing along the shoreline. I looked at the reflection of my house lights in the water and thought of Dad. He'd built that dock with his own hands. I'd just defended it with paperwork and patience. Now the fight would go public. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you expose them at the meeting right away, or let the evidence quietly burn through their insurance first? Comment below. I'm curious how you'd handle it. June 28th arrived thick with summer heat, the kind that made neckties feel like tourniquets. The HOA clubhouse parking lot shimmered with exhaust as neighbors filed in, clutching folders and folding chairs. The air smelled of bug spray and mistrust. Inside, the mood was taut. Low murmurs, plastic cups clinking. I took a seat near the back, binder at my feet, cameras rolling discreetly. Jenny sat 2 rows up, pretending to take notes for community coverage. Sam waited outside on standby with copies of our filings in his briefcase. Marlene opened the meeting with her usual brittle confidence. "We'll begin with outstanding compliance cases," she said, tapping the microphone. Her bracelets jingled like warning bells. "Mr. Collins, your matter remains unresolved. You've refused inspections, accrued fines totaling $5,250, and obstructed official duties." I stood calm. "Before we continue, can we confirm for the record that the HOA insurance policy covers all parcels under enforcement?" Her brow furrowed. "Of course it does." "Good," I said, sliding a single page onto the podium. "Then please read the vendor listed under Lake Maintenance Contract." She hesitated, scanning the line, then froze. Her lips moved silently before the color drained from her face. "Lakeview Resource Group?" "That's correct," I said. "You signed that renewal last week. It's my company, meaning as of June 23rd, I hold the legal maintenance rights for the lake, your lake. Any access, inspection, or alteration now requires my written approval." A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Someone whispered, "He owns the lake." Marlene tried to recover. "This is outrageous. You tricked us." "No," I replied evenly. "You failed to verify jurisdiction before contracting. That's negligence, not fraud. Yet." The deputy by the door cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I can confirm Mr. Collins's deed includes retained water rights. It's on file with the county. He's within his rights." His voice carried the weight of authority, simple and irrefutable. That was visual beat number 1. The moment leverage became visible. Marlene slammed her folder shut. "We'll contest this." "You're welcome to," I said, holding up a second document. "But you might want to explain to your insurer why you've been collecting dues on parcels outside your boundary. Section 4.3 of your policy. Coverage void where jurisdictional claims are unsubstantiated. You've just nullified your own policy." Gasps, then silence. I didn't gloat. I let the facts hang heavy. The board attorney whispered frantically to her. She whispered back, panicked. The deputy stepped aside as murmurs swelled into full-blown unrest. That was the first domino. Neighbors began asking questions about dues, about spending, about fines they'd quietly paid out of fear. Jenny caught it all on video, every frame a future exhibit. I closed my binder, calm as a judge. Here's what happens next. I'm filing a declaratory judgment with the county row to formalize boundary recognition. I'm not asking for damages, only transparency. The rest is up to your insurer and the members here tonight. Someone in the back started clapping. It spread like a fuse. The deputy didn't stop them. After the meeting, I walked out into the warm night air, adrenaline thrumming. Sam met me halfway down the steps, eyes wide. "You actually did it." "She did it," I said. "All I did was let her hang herself with paperwork." Jenny joined us, grinning. "That footage is gold. You could practically hear the board implode in real time." But it wasn't over. Power never collapses quietly. It smolders. By the next morning, my email pinged with threats. Defamation suit pending. unauthorized disclosure, tortious interference. Sam reviewed them all, unfazed. "They're flailing," he said. "None of this holds up. What you did was legal, documented, and publicly validated." Still, I felt a pang of unease. I'd won the moment, but reform takes more than spectacle. That afternoon, Hank showed up with lemonade and gossip. "3 board members resigned this morning," he said. "Word is, the insurer's reviewing their coverage. Marlene called an emergency session, but no one showed." He chuckled. "Guess the empire's out of soldiers." I thanked him and leaned on the fence, watching the sun cut across the water. The fight had turned, but there was still one card to play: the reform deal. If I pushed too hard, the neighborhood would split. If I didn't, Marlene might crawl back under some technicality. So I drafted one more document that night: Proposed Community Reform Agreement. It outlined term limits, audit transparency, and open records guarantees. And it offered the one thing they wanted: cooperation. But first, I'd let the dominoes fall a little further. So here's your question, folks. When you finally corner a corrupt system, do you take it apart piece by piece, or offer it a path to redeem itself? Either way, justice only works if people stay watching. By July 2nd, the HOA was bleeding credibility. The insurer suspended their policy pending review. The treasurer resigned. And Marlene, clinging to whatever dignity she had left, called for an extraordinary closed session. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. Everything important was already on record. Jenny texted that morning. "They're in damage control. How far are you taking this?" "Far enough to make it stick," I replied. The news spread fast. Local outlets picked up Jenny's story. Homeowner proves HOA overstepped boundaries. Lake ownership in dispute. My phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, neighbors, even a city council aide asking for documentation. It was surreal, watching bureaucratic arrogance implode under daylight. Then came the official notice from the state's Community Affairs Division. Investigation opened. Cedar Ridge HOA Governance Compliance Review. That line alone felt like justice breathing down their marble hallways. Still, Marlene wasn't finished. She sent me one last email. Subject line: "Cease and desist. Unauthorized public statements." Her wording was polished but trembling beneath the surface. "Your misrepresentations have caused reputational harm. Cease all communications or face litigation." Sam laughed when he read it. "Defamation requires falsehood, David. You've got documents, timestamps, and a deputy's verification. They can't sue you for accuracy." "Then maybe it's time to finish this properly," I said. The July 10th public hearing was the perfect opportunity. The county had summoned HOA representatives and affected residents for on-record testimony. The setting was a bland administrative hall, fluorescent lights, stackable chairs, a humming air vent that made the flags ripple. I brought my binder, labeled now Phase 3, Accountability. Jenny brought her recorder. The deputy attended again, uniform crisp, expression neutral. When my name was called, I stepped up to the mic. The board sat across from me, diminished, defensive. Marlene's voice quivered slightly as she whispered to her attorney. I spoke clearly. "For 4 months, this HOA has issued fines, citations, and threats without legal jurisdiction. They filed notices on property outside their boundary, enforced void covenants, and collected over $24,000 in unlawful assessments. Every piece of evidence is in this binder, indexed by date and exhibit number." The hearing officer, a steady woman named Dr. Mendoza, adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Collins, are you alleging fraud?" "I'm presenting facts," I said. "The pattern speaks louder than adjectives." I handed over the binder. She flipped through the first few pages, copies of Marlene's notices, the county map overlays, and the maintenance contract. Her eyebrows lifted. "You said this LLC, Lakeview Resource Group, was legally engaged by the HOA?" "Yes, ma'am. They signed the contract without verifying ownership." "Which grants you water rights authority?" "Correct." Marlene tried to interject, but Dr. Mendoza raised a hand. "Mrs. Kitt, please allow him to finish." The deputy stepped forward, offering a notarized deed copy. I verified the record myself. That moment, the rain-beaded microphone gleaming under harsh light, the quiet gasp of the audience. That was visual beat number 2. Dr. Mendoza nodded once, slow and deliberate. These findings will be referred to both the State Oversight Office and the insurer. Until then, HOA enforcement actions are suspended pending review. Suspended. The word hit the room like a gavel. Outside, reporters waited by the steps. Jenny gestured for comment, but I kept it measured. It's not about winning, it's about restoring fairness. The lake belongs to the community, not to a board that forgot what service means. That quote made the evening news. By the following week, 2 more resignations rolled in. The bank froze the HOA's reserve account pending audit. Neighbors began waving again when I passed, small gestures that felt like reclaiming normal. Still, I knew the fight wasn't truly over until reform replaced reaction. That's where my proposal came in, the deal I'd drafted before the meeting. So, let me ask you this. Should communities dissolve HOAs that abuse power, or reform them under strict transparency rules? Drop your take below, because what happens next determines whether this ends as justice or just another headline. 3 days after the hearing, I received an email from the county office. All enforcement actions remain suspended. Parties encouraged to mediate structural reform. That was bureaucratic speak, for they blinked first. I printed the notice, slid it into the final section of my binder, and drove straight to the lake. The morning haze was lifting, the air thick with that sweet mix of algae and pine. For the first time in months, the shoreline felt quiet. No SUVs, no clipboards, just water moving like it used to. That same afternoon, Hank called. "You might want to come to the clubhouse," he said. "They're meeting, and for once, they're asking for you." When I walked in, the room was half full but subdued. No arrogance, no posturing. Marlene sat near the end of the table, shoulders slumped, eyes ringed with exhaustion. The new interim treasurer, a soft-spoken man named Doug, stood. "Mr. Collins," he began, "we'd like to resolve this peacefully. The board accepts your ownership claim. We only ask that you consider reinstating cooperation for maintenance and safety." I placed the binder on the table with a calm thud. "I'm open to it, but under new rules. You'll sign a reform agreement today, or this binder goes straight to the state auditor." Doug nodded slowly. "What terms?" I read them out one by one, each sentence deliberate. "Term limits. No board member may serve more than 2 consecutive years. Transparent voting. Every meeting recorded and publicly posted. Into peace. Independent Ethics Committee. 3 residents not on the board. Fee rollback to pre-2018 levels. Full publication of financial audits annually." The room stayed silent. Then Hank cleared his throat. "And open lake access for verified property owners?" "Of course," I said. "That's non-negotiable." Marlene finally looked up. "And what do you get out of this?" she asked. I paused. "Nothing. I'll dissolve Lakeview Resource Group after the agreement is recorded. I didn't want control. I wanted correction." That broke something in her. She nodded, quietly. "Fine." They signed. Right there, on the table where they'd once drafted fines and threats, the signatures looked like surrender and sanity at the same time. That was reversal number 2, leverage for reform. Afterward, Jenny joined us at the dock to film the closing update. I held the signed document in frame. "This is what accountability looks like when you do it by the book," I said. "One lake, one community, one standard of fairness." In the background, you could hear children laughing, something we hadn't heard near that water in months. Within weeks, the state oversight report confirmed everything. Boundary violations, improper collections, and negligence. The HOA was ordered to refund $24,000 in fines. The insurer reinstated coverage under probationary conditions, requiring quarterly transparency reports. And Marlene? She resigned quietly, citing personal reasons. Last I heard, she moved to another county and joined a garden club. Maybe that's where she belonged all along. The community changed too. A new board held its first open meeting under string lights by the lake. We grilled burgers, shared pie, and laughed about how serious we'd once been about mailbox colors. Hank raised a toast with his dented thermos. "To paperwork that actually works." I smiled, looking out over the water. Dad's plaque caught the sunset one last time. So if you believe I fought the right way, and that this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend Woot. O's still fighting theirs. Subscribe so future stories reach you first, and share this so someone else learns that fairness is worth the paperwork. That's on us. The next morning, I filed a simple deed amendment, transferring the easement rights to the new community trust. The last line read, "For stewardship and shared access." Visual beat number 3 came that evening. The violation notice from months ago curling in the fire pit, edges glowing orange, turning to ash as the lake wind carried it away. And that's how Cedar Ridge learned that justice isn't about who yells loudest, it's about who reads the fine print. Next case? Well, there's a rumor of another HOA down by Ridge Point Estates trying to annex a public trail. Guess I'll need a fresh binder.